This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Broadcom and Carasoft. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, the bad guys turn up the heat on the energy sector. Don't ignore short-term pain for long-term gain. And the Pentagon's cyber warfare survivability strategy. Welcome to FedGov Today with Francis Rose. A team of researchers from Berkeley and Oak Ridge National Laboratories is partnering with the Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response at the Department of Energy. The modeling the team will do will look at earthquake risks to energy infrastructure. Alex Fitzsimmons is director of the CESER office at Energy at the Billington Cybersecurity Summit. He says the threat landscape in the energy sector is intensifying, especially the cyber threat landscape.
Threats are getting worse, not better. I think it's important to recognize that the energy sector is not just a critical sector of the economy, it is the critical sector of the economy that makes every other sector possible. And we know that, but that means our foreign adversaries also know that. And so the energy sector is under particular threat from nation-state threat actors. And we have to be doing absolutely everything we can to strengthen the security and resilience of the energy sector. I think even particularly within the energy sector, subsector of the energy sector are those utilities and pipelines and fuel delivery companies that serve military installations who have DOD customers. Foreign adversaries know who they are, and they are under particular threat if you're looking at potential future conflict scenarios, because we know future conflicts will be fought both in the physical domain and the cyber domain. And so the energy sector might not think of itself as on the front lines of ensuring our national security in a future conflict, but they absolutely are.
Are they starting to understand that and starting to understand what they need to do as private sector organizations in concert with you and your colleagues?
I think so. I think there's been growing awareness within the energy sector and within government that the threats we face are real and that they are intensifying over time. And so I think that's why the CESER mission is so important. We are a unique office within the federal government, really the only office that I can think of that is solely dedicated to strengthening the security and resilience of the energy sector, of the entire energy sector. There are other offices that focus on specific technology verticals, oil, natural gas, nuclear, renewables. We focus on the entire energy sector, big and small. And so we know that 80% of the energy sector is privately owned and operated, right? And so that means we need to be partnering with them to make sure they have access to the same information that we have so that they know what the vulnerabilities are and that they can mitigate them.
Is that information exchange the most important role that you and your colleagues can play to make sure that you know what they know and they know what you know?
I think it's incredibly important. It's really the foundation of the work we do is that partnership with the private sector. When I think of CESER's mission, think of the first and foremost, our goal is to provide timely and actionable information to the energy sector. And we do that in a lot of ways. But then really it's what you do with that information, right? So that information informs the research and development of world-class cyber and physical technologies that CESER invests in. That information and those technologies are then used to harden and secure our energy infrastructure in partnership with the private sector. And that hardening and security helps us to prepare to respond and recover from cyber and physical incidents that we know will happen, the results from which then help us provide more timely and actionable information to the energy sector. It's just that continuous loop of partnership between us and the private sector that makes this a success.
I recall the first director of CESER, Karen Evans, was on my show when the office first stood up.
Right.
And she said one of the challenges that she saw was that the energy sector had information that they didn't know was really valuable to somebody else. And so they didn't know it was important to share that information. What's the best way to get that message out to them to say, maybe you don't think it's important, but it actually is important and other people should know it too?
Yeah, that bi-directional flow of information is incredibly important. Over the years, CESER has invested in a number of important capabilities so that we can strengthen that bi-directional information flow. One example is the Energy Threat Analysis Center, or ETAC, that's located out in Denver, that we've established in partnership with the industry, where we have actually cleared industry participants that can sit down with us and review actionable threat information and figure out is this vulnerability something that's widespread? Is this something that we really need to care about? And then if so, how can we tackle this as a government and as an industry? How can we mitigate it? And then how do we get that information then out to the broader energy sector as quickly as possible so that they can take action to secure their systems?
Are there opportunities to use technologies like AI and large language models and so on to help spread that information, to see what other organizations have that should be shared across the sector and so on?
Totally. I mean, Secretary Wright has talked about AI as Manhattan Project 2.0. President Trump released the AI Action Plan recently. This is a recognition that the United States needs to win the AI race. And I think part of that is figuring out what are the important applications for AI. There's AI for scientific discovery, for national security. I think one of the most important use cases for AI in the future is going to be to secure our energy systems with AI. We know that our adversaries are investing in AI-enabled offensive cyber capabilities. We need to be at the cutting edge of technological development. We need to be investing in cyber defense, and we're starting to do that in partnership with the DOE national laboratories. We have this new program in the FY26 budget that's called AI Forts that I think is going to lay the groundwork for investing in AI for cyber defense and partnering with the private sector to really increase the speed to which we can get critical AI tools that can help automate potentially the entire cyber kill chain out into the hands of the private sector as quickly as possible.
You bring up the labs, and it strikes me they're really an important connective tissue between the private sector organizations and the Energy Department and your office in particular. Is that how you're seeing it from your perspective?
Totally. I mean, across the department, around half of DOE's funding supports the DOE national labs. CESER partners with several of the DOE national labs. They all have important capabilities, different expertise. I think the labs work best when they are complementing each other. You know, they're contractors, right? And so there's a little bit of a competitive spirit between the labs, which I think is good, but they all don't have to do everything. And so we're trying to put together a strategy with the labs that says, bring your best capabilities, your unique capabilities to bear. Let's figure out how each of your capabilities complement what we're doing in partnership with the private sector so that we can make progress.
You mentioned earlier, I think everybody understands that the bad guys are using these tools too. What is the best outcome that you expect to see in terms of at least trying to stay on par with the bad guys, if not get ahead of them?
Yeah, I think given the severity of the threats we face, we know that foreign adversaries are pre-positioned inside of our energy systems. They're already inside the wire. They have an ability to hold our critical infrastructure at risk for a time and place of our choosing. One thing that we have to make sure we do is recognize that we have to be able to operate through compromise. We have to assume that they are already inside. We're not going to be able to stop every attack. Everybody knows that, right? But it's what do you do on a bad day? So you have to have an operational plan in place. I mean, this security and hardening of the energy infrastructure is as much an operational planning effort as it is a technology effort. And so we have to have plans in place to operate through compromise. How do you, for example, segment your IT and OT systems so that even if an adversary gets into the OT side, they can't move laterally across the network into the OT side? Even if they get into the OT side, how do you segment particularly critical OT systems? And then how can you then make sure that when incidents occur, because they will, that you have a plan in place to respond and recover as rapidly as possible? Because in the energy sector, we're talking about human lives, right? People expect their energy to work. It's supposed to work 100% of the time. And when it doesn't, people notice, and the stakes are incredibly high. So our adversaries know that. That's why we're targeting, that's why they're targeting us. That's why we need to bring all of our resources to bear to fight back.
You can read more about the work that's happening at CESER on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com.